나랑 이거 뭐야?
Could Jungkook's heartfelt confession secretly make Taehyung cry? Is there a misunderstanding that almost changes their friendship forever? Read this emotional fan fiction and discover the surprising truth behind the silence. The evening sky over Seoul carried an unusual calm, the kind that appeared only after days of endless rain. The city lights shimmered across the Han River, reflecting like thousands of tiny stars floating on the water. Inside the HYB building, however, silence felt heavier than the night itself. It wasn't the peaceful silence of people resting after a long day. It was the silence that lingered when words had been left unsaid. Jungkook stood alone in one of the rehearsal rooms, staring at his own reflection in the mirror. The room had witnessed countless memories, from exhausting dance practices to moments of laughter that echoed long after everyone had gone home. Tonight, the mirrors reflected only one person. His expression was calm, but his eyes betrayed him. They carried questions. Questions he had been asking himself for weeks. Had he unknowingly hurt Taehyung? Had something changed between them? Or had he simply imagined the growing distance that seemed impossible to explain? No one else noticed. At least, that was what Jungkook believed. Earlier that afternoon, everyone had gathered to discuss future schedules. The atmosphere had been cheerful. Jimin joked about old memories, RM laughed at Jin's endless teasing, and even Suga smiled quietly from the corner. Only Taehyung remained unusually silent. Not cold. Not angry. Just distant. Whenever Jungkook looked toward him, Taehyung smiled politely before looking away. That single moment repeated itself several times. Each time felt heavier than the last. Jungkook couldn't ignore it anymore. After the meeting ended, he found himself walking through the empty hallways, hoping he might accidentally run into Taehyung. Instead, he found only silence. Hours passed. The rehearsal rooms emptied. The staff members slowly returned home. The building became almost deserted. Jungkook remained. Something inside him refused to leave before understanding what had happened. Meanwhile, on the rooftop, Taehyung leaned against the railing, watching the city below. The cool breeze brushed against his face, carrying memories he wished he could organize. Everything had changed so quickly. Military service had separated them physically. Schedules had changed. Life had changed. People had changed. Or perhaps, they had simply grown in different directions. He hated thinking that, because every memory reminded him otherwise. The laughter, the concerts, the late-night conversations, the endless teasing, the moments that never needed explanations. Yet lately, every conversation felt shorter. Every smile seemed more careful. Every silence felt louder. Taehyung closed his eyes. He remembered something Jungkook had said during an interview weeks earlier. It had been completely innocent. Everyone else had laughed. Armies celebrated the moment online. Only Taehyung quietly wondered whether those words had carried another meaning. He never asked. Instead, he created answers inside his own mind. Answers built entirely from assumptions. Downstairs, Jungkook finally made a decision. He stepped into the elevator. The highest floor. The rooftop. The elevator doors opened slowly. Cold air welcomed him. Then he saw him. Taehyung. Standing alone beneath the city lights. For several seconds neither of them spoke. Neither wanted to ruin the fragile peace. Finally Jungkook broke the silence. Have I done something wrong? The question sounded much softer than he intended. Taehyung turned around. His expression remained calm. What makes you ask that? You've been avoiding me. I'm not. You don't even look at me anymore. I do. No. Silence. Jungkook smiled weakly. I know you better than anyone. Taehyung looked down. The words hit harder than expected. Because they were true. And yet, things didn't feel true anymore. I've just been thinking, Taehyung finally answered. About what? Us. Jungkook's heartbeat quickened. Those two letters suddenly carried endless possibilities. Us. Friends? Brothers? Teammates? Family? What exactly did Taehyung mean? I feel like, Taehyung whispered. Then he stopped. He couldn't continue. Not because he lacked words. Because he feared them. Jungkook stepped closer. You can tell me. Another long silence followed. The city below continued moving as though nothing extraordinary was happening. Cars passed. People laughed. Life continued. Yet for these two friends, time had almost stopped. Taehyung inhaled deeply. I thought. He paused again. I thought maybe you didn't need me anymore. Jungkook blinked. For a moment, he couldn't understand. What? You've become stronger. You've become more independent. You've met so many people. You've grown. I kept wondering whether I was just someone from the past. The words came out slowly, carefully, as though each sentence carried years of hidden emotion. Jungkook stared silently. Then, he laughed. Not because the confession was funny, because it was unbelievable. Taehyung frowned. Why are you laughing? Jungkook shook his head. I've spent weeks thinking you didn't need me anymore. This time, Taehyung froze. Neither of them had expected the same misunderstanding. Both had quietly believed they were the one being left behind. Both had protected themselves. Both had mistaken silence for distance. Both had allowed fear to become louder than trust. Jungkook looked toward the city lights before speaking again. You know what scared me the most? Taehyung waited. I realized I had started guessing what you were thinking instead of asking. The words echoed in the quiet night. Taehyung smiled sadly. I did exactly the same. Neither noticed the tears forming. Not yet. Because relief often arrives before emotion catches up. They talked for hours afterward. About old memories. About military service. About growing older. About pressure. About expectations. About fear. About missing each other while pretending everything was fine. The conversation became the longest they had shared in months. No cameras. No interviews. No performances. Just two lifelong friends finally choosing honesty over assumptions. Later, when Jungkook stepped away to answer a phone call, Taehyung remained standing near the railing. He smiled. Then quietly, a single tear rolled down his cheek. Not from sadness, not from regret, but from relief. Because the misunderstanding he had quietly carried for weeks had never truly existed. It had lived only inside his own fears. He quickly wiped away the tear before Jungkook returned. No one would ever know. Or so he thought. Jungkook had already seen it. He didn't mention it. Instead, he simply stood beside Taehyung once more. Neither needed another explanation. Sometimes understanding isn't found through dramatic speeches. Sometimes it begins with one honest question. Have I done something wrong? And sometimes, that single question becomes the reason two people rediscover the bond they believed they had almost lost. The night grew colder, but neither of them seemed eager to leave the rooftop. The conversation had lifted an invisible weight from both of their shoulders, yet another feeling lingered quietly beneath the relief. It was the realization of how easily fear could rewrite reality when left alone for too long. Jungkook looked toward the skyline, breathing deeply as though he were seeing Seoul with fresh eyes. Beside him, Taehyung rested both hands on the railing, letting the wind carry away the doubts that had occupied his thoughts for weeks. Neither of them spoke for several minutes. This silence felt different. It was no longer uncomfortable. It was the comfortable silence shared by people who no longer felt the need to hide behind carefully chosen words. Both understood that sometimes the strongest friendships were not the ones that never faced misunderstandings, but the ones willing to confront them before they became permanent walls. Jungkook eventually smiled to himself and quietly admitted that he had replayed dozens of conversations in his mind during the previous month, trying to identify the exact moment everything had changed. Every joke, every message, every brief interaction became evidence inside his imagination. He realized how dangerous assumptions could become when combined with exhaustion and overthinking. Taehyung listened carefully before confessing that he had done exactly the same thing. He had interpreted ordinary moments as hidden messages. When Jungkook appeared busy, Taehyung assumed he was intentionally creating distance. When Jungkook answered messages later than usual, Taehyung wondered whether priorities had shifted. None of those thoughts had been supported by facts. They were simply fears disguised as certainty. As they exchanged those confessions, both laughed at how similar their thoughts had become without either of them realizing it. They had spent weeks worrying about losing each other's friendship, while unknowingly protecting the very misunderstanding that caused the fear in the first place. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. It almost felt like reading two different diaries that somehow contained the same story from opposite perspectives. Jungkook let out a quiet laugh, shaking his head as if he still couldn't believe how much energy both of them had wasted fighting invisible fears. The laughter faded into another comfortable silence, one that no longer carried uncertainty but understanding. The city stretched endlessly before them, glowing beneath the midnight sky, while the cool breeze swept across the rooftop. For the first time in weeks, neither of them felt the need to pretend everything was fine. "You know," Jungkook said softly, keeping his eyes on the distant skyline. "I kept telling myself that if you wanted to talk, you would." Taehyung smiled faintly. "And I kept telling myself exactly the same thing." The realization made them laugh again. How strange, they thought, that two people who had spent years understanding each other without words had somehow become trapped by silence. Jungkook rested his elbows against the railing. "I even wondered if you were angry because of something I couldn't remember." Taehyung turned toward him with surprise. "You actually thought that?" Jungkook nodded. "I replayed every conversation in my head. Every rehearsal. Every interview. Every joke. I wondered if I had crossed a line without realizing it." Taehyung lowered his head. "I wasn't angry. I know. I was scared." Those three words carried more weight than either of them expected. Jungkook looked at him carefully. "Scared of what?" Taehyung hesitated. He wasn't used to saying these thoughts out loud. For years he had hidden difficult emotions behind smiles, jokes, and quiet moments of reflection. Sharing them now felt unfamiliar. "I was scared that life was moving too fast." Jungkook remained silent. "I was scared we'd become so busy building our futures that one day we'd realize we'd stopped making memories together." The confession lingered between them. Jungkook felt his chest tighten. He had never imagined Taehyung carrying that burden alone. "I never wanted that. I know. But fear doesn't always listen to logic." The sentence stayed in Jungkook's mind. Fear doesn't always listen to logic. How true that was. He thought about everything they had experienced together over the years. The exhausting trainee days. The uncertainty before their debut. The endless practices that stretched until sunrise. The excitement of performing before thousands. The overwhelming pressure that followed global success. The months spent apart fulfilling responsibilities. Through every chapter, one thing had remained constant. Their friendship. Yet somehow, during one quiet season of life, Both of them had almost allowed silence to convince them that everything had changed. Jungkook looked toward Taehyung. "I should have called you." Taehyung smiled. "I should have answered before you even had to." Another laugh escaped them. Small, gentle, honest. The rooftop suddenly felt lighter. Far below, traffic continued flowing through the city, completely unaware that two lifelong friends had just ended a misunderstanding that had existed only inside their own minds. After another hour of talking, they finally decided to leave. The elevator ride downstairs was unusually peaceful. Neither of them reached for their phones. Neither felt distracted. Instead, they continued talking about simple things. Favorite meals they had missed. Movies they wanted to watch. Songs that had inspired them recently. Normal conversations. The kind they used to have every day. When the elevator doors opened, the hallways were almost empty. Only a few lights remained on. Cleaning staff quietly worked in distant corridors. The building felt peaceful. As they walked toward the parking area, Jungkook suddenly stopped. "What?" Taehyung asked. "I just remembered something." "What is it?" Jungkook laughed awkwardly. "A few weeks ago I bought something." Taehyung looked confused. "You bought something?" "I planned to give it to you." Taehyung blinked. "But..." "I never did." "Why?" Jungkook rubbed the back of his neck. "Because I thought you didn't want to see me." Taehyung stared at him for several seconds before bursting into laughter. "You serious?" "I was." "You've been carrying a gift around all this time?" Jungkook nodded sheepishly. "It's probably still in my apartment." Taehyung couldn't stop laughing. The image was almost unbelievable. Weeks of unnecessary worry. Weeks of awkward distance. Meanwhile, a forgotten gift had been sitting quietly in Jungkook's apartment, waiting for a moment that never came. Disclaimer: this story is a work of fan fiction created solely for entertainment purposes. It is entirely fictional and is not based on real events, official statements, or verified information. The characters portrayed are inspired by public figures, but the dialogue, emotions, situations, and storyline have been imagined by the author. This content is not intended to spread rumors, misinformation, or make claims about the personal lives or relationships of any real individuals. Any similarities to actual events are purely coincidental. Please enjoy this story as a creative fictional narrative and continue to support BTS and all its members through their official music, content, and verified announcements.